All right, we are live and we are looking forward to this session. It's December 10th, Wednesday, December 10th is the Digital Roundtable. We have a great guest with us today, and there's a lot going on to report. But before we start all that, let's have our own John Sibley Butler play some music.
I always heard that his herb was top shelf, and I just couldn't wait to find out for myself. Don't knock it till you've tried it, and I've tried it, my friend. And I'll never smoke weed with Willie again. But I learned my lesson in a small Texas town. He lit up a big boy and he passed it around. The last thing I heard before they took me in. Well, I'll never smoke weed with Willie again. And I'll never smoke weed with Willie again. The party's all over before it begins. Just pour me some old whiskey river, my friend. And I'll never smoke weed with Willie again.
All right. I love that. I love that.
Well done.
Yeah,
Well
absolutely.
done.
Well,
Absolutely.
we had all this legislation in Texas about that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going through
Yeah.
the legislature.
So there is so much going on. I'm attending. I'm in San Francisco today, until Thursday. Landed yesterday, attending the Digital Twin Consortium conference.
Mm-hmm.
And we are talking about agentic AI and all kinds of things that are going on and how digital twins fit into this. And there's two kinds of digital twin conversations going on. One is called the software virtual digital twin race, which is happening, right? That's the sort of the logical representation of everything on computers and with ones and zeros and graphical views of whatever maps and assets and things. But then there is also a big push going on, which is called the physical AI, and the and how digital twins will basically bridge the gap between the physical AI and the virtual AI, and how animate, sort of call it analog things or non-living things will with new
Mm-hmm.
structure, with new sensors, with new things, and digital twin technology will come to life. So you'll have walking chairs, rolling chairs, walking tables, rolling tables. You'll have uh, objects moving around, sort of like in the cartoons and the from the infamous Disney movies, pick the movie Beauty and the Beast, whatever, right? And pretty soon all these things are going to start manifesting themselves, and they need to be controlled, they need to be managed, they need to be coordinated, they need to be recharged, if they run out of battery, what have you. And the whole digital twin thing and how this is going to happen from weapon systems to everything in far in between is going to be managed as a race. There's a race going on. And I find that too fascinating, and the number of startups. And so I'm sitting here in Silicon Valley listening to all these speakers, and there are 45,000 AI startups in the valley, just in the valley, from 4,000 a year ago. The fury of capital going into the space is unheard of. Companies are getting 100 to $1 billion a pop. It's just mind blowing what's happening. So anyway, so John Butler, what say you?
Well, I say that I've been looking at the same thing, but more on the bubble side. I think that the massive amount of money in data centers, and I think the technology is changing also. I think supercomputers will change it. I think that our present AI will be obsolete in maybe 1 to 2 years. I think it is at its very, very genesis now. And but from my point of view, and I think I sent you guys a great study on that. To what
Mm-hmm.
extent is the AI revolution an actual bubble? To put it in everyday words, how can we recoup, if you will, how can firms recoup the amount of money and the amount of wealth that they're pouring into data centers and the other aspects of AI, including all of the new startups. Of course, we've been here before. We've been here with the dot-com era, but it's something that we have to go through. And as my father used to say, well, it's not a bubble until it bursts. So I think that is very, very interesting that what you were there and look at the amount of startups, Andreas, that have
Mm-hmm.
increased, right,
Mm-hmm.
over the years. I mean, that is a
Mm-hmm.
tremendous, I think that might beat the dot-com bubble, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think we
Mm-hmm.
have to be very, very cognizant of two things. With all new technologies, whether it's the telephone, whether it's whether it's the automobile,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's the telegraph, whether it's the computer, then there comes a disjunction between the wealth and the larger society. So as in my world, this is all I do is do startups, invest in startups, see people get wealthy, people do great things, right? But the other thing we have to pay attention to, and it's very, very different now, because this AI is very different when it comes to job replacement. So we got to keep an eye on the number of jobs that's being created, but more importantly, we need to track the number of new jobs that's being created by AI, including, by the way, those ones that's living under the bubble. That is, those who work
Mm-hmm.
for the startups who got funded. That is also a creation. But what we
Mm-hmm.
don't know, and we never knew this, it's no formula, it's no economic formula. Where will we be in 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
10 years? As Ford said, well, my customers want a faster horse. So where will we be with this faster computer? And, and
Mm-hmm.
and and this is where it becomes so interesting. It stretches like the television. It stretches to homes. I can remember people saying, "Well, we have television. We never have to go to school again, right?"
Mm-hmm.
So we have to pay attention to that, and we have to pay attention to the interaction between people, and
Mm-hmm.
essentially what it is doing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the sociological, psychological interaction between people, what it is doing to generations. Because remember this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when I went to college, I didn't go to college to learn. I went to college to meet people, right? I mean, you can learn
Mm-hmm.
anywhere, right? You go to
Mm-hmm.
college so you can join a fraternity and meet all the boys that you're going to be with in your 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s so you can lay back and tell big stories about when you were
Mm-hmm.
young, right? Well,
Mm-hmm.
it's having a direct impact. As talking to my professors, my professor colleagues, how do we know now when people are learning?
Mm-hmm.
And not just college. A kid in the ninth grade can write an essay now just as well as a kid that's working on his PhD. But on the other
Mm-hmm.
hand, so can a guy that's a plumber. On the other hand, somebody now can sit in their home and just do the AI on my pipes
Mm-hmm.
broke. How do I fix it? It is better than YouTube, right? YouTube
Mm-hmm.
was very, very good. So we got all these fringe things that's going on, Andreas. As we get excited about the new technology, we must pay attention to the economy, what the economy is doing, because the country now is going, I mean, the haves and the have-nots is getting wider and wider and wider. And I think we should always pay attention to that. So it's a lot of interesting stuff going on with this new technology that we call AI.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What say you, Llewellyn King? Are you muted?
It's a very difficult time. Do not confuse startups with success. Startups are people hoping that if you've got 45,000 new startups, you are in a casino. You are not in a business world.
Mm-hmm.
That is not a realistic world. That is some rich people hoping to get richer, hoping to become Google or Nvidia or Facebook
Mm-hmm.
or what,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not going to make it. Most of them are going to fail. Many of them are doing this with borrowed money, not with equity of their own. And this is going to result in a considerable readjustment. Meanwhile, a lot of the leadership in applied AI appears to be moving to China. They appear to be closer to going to making humanoid robots that will do all sorts of things like serving at the table or pumping gasoline or picking fruit or weeding a garden they're much more likely to get them to market faster because they have an infrastructure in the components. They've built an infrastructure in the components of robots. We've built our infrastructure almost entirely in the concepts of AI, not in the components that will be needed to take it from being essentially software into the world of hardware. China seems to have gotten an awful lot right while we've been thumping our chests and somehow patronizing China and denigrating Europe and some other rather strange things in the international global alignment. China has been forging ahead, and it is no good doing what we tend to do, which is to say, they can't, the system's wrong, it can't work, they're indebted, they're this. They've just had $1 trillion trade surplus. Nobody's ever seen anything like that. And whether we want to face it or we want to look the other way, the determining country next year in many things will be China. And they still have a tremendous grip on our well-being and their control of rare earths, which we've been trying to adjust that in imbalance, and we haven't come very far. In fact, many of the imbalances we've sought to balance, we've not succeeded in balancing very well. We haven't lured a lot of manufacturing back to the US, and when manufacturing has left China, it has tended to go to another Asian country rather than coming to the US. So we're living in a bit of a fantasy land, propped up by the fact that our economy, at least the stock market, is doing very well. But the stock market is not totally indicative of the health of a nation. We went through a time when Brazil's stock market was up and the Brazilians were going down. And we're going through a period where Johnny so correctly mentioned of two nations just wide apart. The health of small companies, of startups that we should be looking at today is probably the startups on Main Street, the startups selling carpets, the startups doing carpentry. Those are the startups that count, because that'll be the economic muscle of the future, and it will also be the jobs of the future. And that kind of startup will compensate for the jobs that AI, which most assuredly will take away. A very difficult transition point. And I regret to say that the political class, and I say political class advisedly, both sides are asleep at the switch. We're arguing about trivialities when this great tsunami of change is upon us. That's what
Well, let me share with you guys the announcement yesterday by the Secretary of War, where he disclosed the new tool that the Department of War is going to use. It's a partnership with Google. It is built on Gemini. It's called Gen AI. And it was announced yesterday by the secretary. And when the Gen AI was asked, how will you help the Department of War achieve its mission through a user prompt, it replied with a list of capabilities, including, among other things, creating and refining documents, analyzing information, processing, analyzing satellite images, and even auditing computer code for security purposes. The Gen AI said, I quote, I can support the Department of War's mission by providing a range of capabilities designed for a secure, high-impact environment. I am ready to support your mission requirements. So it's fascinating because, again, you know, the application of these technologies is really where the rubber meets the road. And I can tell you that GM and Ford and all these other companies, and I mean, it's a race. And in the land sector, the data centers, the real estate, the physical world is a big part of what's going to be impacted by all this. So I'm really curious, and let me introduce our guest. We're lucky to have Mick Hawton with us today, who's a partner and chief strategy officer at Headwater, successful development and real estate firm in Texas that actually stretches their arms outside of the state as well. He'll be with us, and Mick is involved in a lot of economic development circles, and he just relinquished a chairmanship on that in Central Texas, and one of the many, and he obviously participates in many more. So let me say hi to him and after introducing him, ask him to basically elaborate a little bit about what he's looking at, how he sees real estate, the economy, as which is a natural hedge for the collapse of the dollar, and what's happening, what is the activity. Mick, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Andres. Well, and John, it's good to speak with you again. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm always excited. I always find myself swirling around mentally while listening to people talk, because there's a lot of ideas that you guys talked about that I think are critical, not just for the industry that I'm in, but for many. Like you said, there's so many things going on in that respect. Just a really quick synopsis. 2026 uh, uh, was probably a hard year for a lot of people in real estate generally.
2025.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, 2025. I jumped a year ahead. I'm already done with 26. It hasn't even started yet. 2025 was a hard year for a lot of people in real estate. Deals are still getting done, and the most common theme that has come out in almost every dialogue I've had, and even in our own space, is that a lot of really deep, meaningful conversations. A lot of work is being done. No, not very many final decisions. So whether people are choosing to move forward with projects, whether on ourselves or other folks, whether they close on a deal or not, or move forward with it, the pace of that has definitely been slower, no question. We're definitely seeing a slowdown in that. But and that's more on what I'd call the development side. Our construction business has been as busy as it's ever been. Truthfully, we have stayed extremely busy. There are a lot of organizations that we work with that are, either manufacturing or large service industries, that we continue to seek locations, and instead of necessarily doing a lot of leasing, they're doing a lot more acquisition of properties and building their own facilities. And so we still continue to see nearshoring and onshoring activities in the state of Texas, still very advantageous in a lot of ways. And then really for ourselves on the development side, we continue to have the capability to fund projects and get debt and equity, and usually still on really favorable terms for ourselves. And our projects continue to go vertical and lease up. I think our lease up periods are a little extended, not by years or anything like that, a few months versus what they used to be. So they've added on a few months, but things continue to take place, and that may be because of the space that we generally operate in. We're not tending not to build, 500,000, 1 million square foot, warehousing and distribution facilities. We're building a little bit smaller. So that's a quick synopsis of kind of where we're at. There's the ramp up for 2026, which is actually the new year. I don't know if you know that, but it's actually 2025. And it's going to be 2026. The ramp up for 2026 it's pretty ferocious right now. There's a lot going on. So there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of, even more so than what we experienced at the end of 24 going into 25. The activity rate is extremely high. So I think with some interest rate changes, still some adjustments, I don't think our industry necessarily is going to, continue to decline. I think things are starting to, at least everybody's ending the year on a positive.
The market is up dramatically because the Fed just announced a lowering of the interest.
Yeah, which we expected. So we expected that would happen.
But Meg, real quick before John jumps in, any synopsis or summary on what's happening with the hyperscalers in Texas?
Oh well, from what I've read and seen, and then some of the clients that we work with, which always remain nameless, but Texas is a very they love the market, I think, for the business friendly environment and for the accessibility of land. There's no question that there's a really strong ongoing dialogue about utility infrastructure, water, wastewater, and particularly power. And not that we talked about this a while ago, Andreas, and I don't think that it's changed much, other than it's probably gone up just a little bit recently. That the number of projects that are proposed in Texas far exceed the current capabilities and the planned capabilities of the power grid in Texas. So I think everybody's really exploring a lot of alternative solutions that they can, and combinations of power production. And then of course there's power production, then there's power transmission, and there's all those, and each one of those pieces has its own challenges, which I think everybody on this call knows very well, as far as this group. But their pace of activity has not slowed, as far as like the inquiries, the driving for finding sites, but I will say it does feel like a race, to be honest with you. It feels that way. The time constraints, the demands for answers, the creativity that people are applying to solutions. It's definitely, that has not slowed down one bit.
Okay.
Well,
Go ahead, Johnny.
Mick, I think in 1835, David Crockett said, "Y'all can go to hell, but I'm going to Texas." Now, my question is, you are in the midst of the growth. As we said,
Yes.
Texas become an undeveloped country to a developing country, I like to say. Do you see a lot of competition coming in from outside of the state, from different parts of the states? And the other thing is, what about the workforce that's driving what you do?
Okay. I would say that's actually one of the big advantages of Texas, and I'm sure that y'all are familiar with some of the statistics around Texas and its workforce. That Texas has probably one of the only states that's the number of 18-year-olds that will that are coming in, being born and raised in Texas. That number is growing, where most states the number of 18-year-olds is declining, and that a lot of those 18-year-olds stay in Texas. So we have a good retention rate. So I think there's an education component to the workforce. I just recently heard, in a presentation, which I agree with. You can have this workforce, but if it's not trained, if it's not educated, if it doesn't meet the demands of what the needs are for the market, that can be problematic for sure. But I don't know that right now that Texas has hit. That's a big draw for a lot of organizations coming into Texas. So just to kind of comment on that. Then the other question about, do we see competitors coming in? Yes, of course. We're seeing more entities that may have had a finger in Texas and trying things out, opening offices, pushing to get into the market to participate. Large construction companies that may have been in the upper Midwest or the Northeast that haven't necessarily been here as much are definitely pushing to create a foothold in this market. Because again, I think you're right. I think Davy Crockett said it well, and you quoted him wonderfully, because people see it. They're certainly not blind to it, and by any stretch of the word. And so definitely see that happening.
Okay.
Texas can be interesting though yeah, Llewellyn. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, not at all. Excuse me, I have a cold today. Mick, do you see an end to this Texas gold rush? Looking at it from outside, it's a lot less compelling, as it does not seem, for example, outside of Texas to have a large impact, destroying some talented people. But we also hear a lot about the water shortage, about inadequate education at the school level, and of course that you have a very divided populace in some ways. From the outside, it doesn't look nearly as glamorous as apparently it does from the inside. And how do you think it would sustain a general recession, which is highly likely? We have inflation. We just had a 25 basis points cut in the
Right.
interest rate, which will almost certainly stimulate some inflation. And we are still beholden to China for our lifeblood, which is rare earths. This is not an envious situation, and Texas
Yeah.
cannot operate outside of the United States. It is still part of the US, and yet I hear this very distinct triumphalism from Texas, and I don't hear it anywhere else. Do you think there'll be a Texas crash?
It's an interesting question. There's a couple of thoughts that I have. One, this was one of my favorite quotes. I don't know if it's an old one or it was attributed to someone, but I have heard it here that Texas is the best country in the United States. And sometimes that's where I feel like some of that mentality comes from, is that, they tend to operate on a scale where they feel like they have the ability to be able to move things forward on a different scale, in that regard. I think I will speak to Central Texas has definitely weathered most economic downturns, and Texas generally very well. The common phrase is, last in, first out. So we're last into that economic funk, and then we're the first ones out. I think for this time, even just yesterday, I was sitting at a presentation by Dr. Perryman, and it's clear that our numbers are not what they used to be. So we are experiencing some compression of what is happening in Texas, and I would say that there's so many factors associated with that, from the utility and infrastructure side to affordability of housing, and even having the stock to be able to support the number of people that continue to move to the state of Texas. And maybe this number has changed recently, and I might be 6 months outdated, but my understanding is we're still having between 160 and 180 people move to Texas every day. And so there's still a pretty good in-migration, into the state. So the people side of it, I think, is, you know, the volume. I'll just say volume of people is, I think there's answers for some of that. I do believe that the work that's being done on the infrastructure around power, is going to be a question that's going to potentially erode some of that optimism over time. Water will also erode some of that over time, for sure. I would say that whether this is right or wrong, in the last 12 months, the dialogues that I've been engaged with, people still acknowledge water, but they don't speak about it in the same way. So I don't know if that's an issue of people just mentally just setting it aside, saying we passed some legislation to allocate money for the purposes of improving our water infrastructure. And so, okay, we have that. So now they're kind of mentally setting it aside. Or if the question of power is more pressing. So the ability to be able to meet the power demands that are coming feels more pressing, and therefore it's risen to the top of the list for a lot of folks. So I think there's a lot of positive things about Texas still. I think as far as like markets go, there's a lot of land. There's a lot of available land. There's a lot of places that want to continue to grow. People want to invest, and there is an optimism that exists. But I don't think most of the people that I know that are informed, that are looking at things, recognize that those issues around workforce and education, utility infrastructure, and the ability to be able to provide those necessities. I don't think that they're certainly not blind to it. There's no question they're not blind to it. But whether or not they're that we're going to be able to provide solutions at the pace that the growth is demanding, which means continue to grow and things improve, or things start to tail off because we're not able to meet that growth curve the way we hope to. So I don't know if that directly answered your question, but it certainly prompts a lot of thoughts, because certainly having a lot of conversations with people about it.
Mick, tell me, what are the impediments that your operation is facing? different places you get different impediments. It could be licensing, it could be demand, it could be supply chain, it could be worker skill. What are your impediments?
I mean, you give a pretty good list. Well, and to be honest with you, those we've experienced all those things trying to get qualified, skilled workforce people. We've faced that challenge. We've faced permitting and a timeline, pressures to be able to execute projects in a timely way. We've faced supply chain issues with getting, steel on time for construction projects. We've felt the impediments of some of the volatility of some of the core materials for construction, concrete and steel, and just a lot of those types of the electrical equipment. We felt the constraints of that, just being able to get transformers and of the right size and in a timely way. Those have, and most of those are not that there's nothing available. It's just the time frame for getting the solution is elongated because of even bigger, larger macro issues that we might feel that here locally in our or in our markets, but they're being constrained much further away from us, right? Those constraints are happening way further out in that chain, and so by the time we're feeling it, it's just gotten so elongated. But I do see other companies. There's several companies from South Korea that are moving into this market. Several of them are providing those types of resources. That and I'm saying not people resources. I'm talking about this in particular. They manufacture electrical equipment, so transformers and switchgear and panels and things of that nature. And they're not going to keep their operations solely overseas. They're moving operations to the United States. They're moving them into Texas and Utah and other places so that their capability to service the market, it's not as constrained by distance and shipping constraints and things like that. So I'm seeing some of that too. Not a big tsunami of it, but there's things that are happening to try and resolve some of those issues.
Yeah.
I would just like to add that you're absolutely right. I see a huge tourniquet, if you will, on development for large bulk power equipment, most of which is still coming from China, particularly generating equipment.
Not from China, Glenn. It's not allowed from China. From Japan and Korea.
So let me just continue with this Texas theme. I see a number of things. I'm going to draw from things that's been in Texas monthly. Number one, the revitalization of small cities, where wealth is moving to small cities and literally reviving those great small cities that were done mostly in Central Texas by Germans when they got here. And the other one is the building of cities. I don't know if you've heard of the Epic Center city that's going in Dallas. Is a Muslim-centric city with a mosque, with over 2,000 homes, with the best colleges and the best universities. So the freedom, of course, that's in the courts a little bit. How did you see, first of all, just the remodeling of smaller cities and how they just coming out and bursting like a joint? And they don't have to be close to Austin. I've been working in Brownsville. I've been working in Brownsville with the Midi Foundation. I'm on that board.
Yeah.
And Brownsville is booming. We don't talk about Brownsville. So how did you see?
I'd love to talk about Brownsville. So
how do you see the revitalization of these cities in terms of what you do?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this because actually we have a division of our organization that he works on these small city revitalization projects, particularly downtown revitalization projects. And I think a couple quick thoughts. One is that many of them have not seen these types of influx of people or jobs or anything for maybe since oil boom times or a long time ago. So some of these towns, and I'm with you, it doesn't have to be close to Austin or even Dallas or Houston. These are really, with some of the things that are going on out in Amarillo and San
Mm-hmm.
Angelo and, Brownwood and kind of down that corridor on the kind of the
Mm-hmm.
central west part of Texas are all experiencing a significant amount of growth. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's a couple themes that have come out of our work with them. We're doing a fair amount of consulting with these cities. Is first of all, they love the idea, and generally, some people don't. Not everybody loves it, but generally they like the idea of the growth. Okay, what they don't want it to be is really haphazard. Most people that cities that we interact with have said we want to be as intentional about this growth as we possibly can be. And so sometimes we see the constraints of people that get nervous about the growth, and then they try to constrain it by using what I would just call more traditional mechanisms like permitting time periods and zoning requirements and things of that nature that kind of try to kind of hold the growth. But since the ability of landowners to remove land from the ETJ, build it in the county. Counties don't have zoning jurisdiction, and they're moving forward with projects on a large scale in county areas. And so you can let that happen as a city, and then watch all of your resources get pulled to another area. A lot of them are saying, look, we want to be really intentional about this, but we also we need to be able to work with the growth. Otherwise, it's going to happen all around us as a community, and we're not going to realize the benefits of it. Whether that's sales tax generation or property tax revenue to improve the schools, things of that nature. All of those things they're definitely paying attention to. What I guess, so that's kind of a couple of themes that have come out of it. What I have continued to see as well is just a strong desire to kind of honor the legacy of any given community and try and capture what that legacy is, and then have that be a part of the intentional growth. So I think county seats that have a county courthouse and a square in Texas, there are certain advantages that community might have just because of some of the public side drivers. But those that have a main street that maybe don't have that kind of setup are also starting to do pretty well about revitalizing their downtowns, about building the right kinds of projects that attract strong tenant bases. And so we're seeing a lot of it. I mean, you can talk about it from Smithville to Liberty Hill to to all those other cities I already mentioned. It's that wave is really interesting to me.
Yeah, you mentioned it, but it's just amazing to look at the great, county houses that they built, the courthouses, all of the big
Mm-hmm.
houses throughout. Okay, well, thank you very much. I think that if you look at other states, I think that other states have gone through this also. But if you look at where you are now, you have a lot of challenges, but you're going to be very, very busy.
Yes, I agree. We are very busy. I also think I kind of wanted to jump back a little bit to the earlier dialogue, if that's okay, Andreas.
Sure.
I'm really interested in this conversation about AI, and I'd love to hear a little bit more from you guys too. But I'm always reminded when I go to participate in dialogues about AI, because I'm not an AI expert. I don't even not even begin to say that I live in that space.
Most people are not.
Yeah,
Even the
but what
AI
I
experts are not.
Well, Mark, let me
um,
just say this. Mark, it's just machine learning through the old Statistica application. Okay,
right,
so I'll give you a short lesson. One time you told a computer what to do, right, and it did it. And then
yeah,
all of a sudden you tell the computer what to do, and it learned more, and it said, "Oh, we're going to anticipate you're going to do this now." Right now,
right.
you tell a computer what to do, and it turns on you and tell you what to do. So machine
Welcome to
learning is where
AI.
it's at.
Yeah,
But to me,
right.
as a professor, as a statistician myself,
Yeah,
SPSS was AI. We've
right,
been doing a long time. But
right.
man, it is everywhere.
Yeah,
And Mark, it's just starting.
yeah. So this is the part that's really interesting to me about it, though, is partly is about the definition. So when I talk to like just people generally, my family members or other people, when I say AI, they say ChatGPT or some
Mm-hmm.
other, function like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way they're defining it, is this
Mm-hmm.
interface that they're having, Copilot, whatever the case may be, Gemini.
Mm-hmm.
They're like,
Mm-hmm.
that's AI. When I
Mm-hmm.
talk to people that are in the sphere of AI, they don't talk about that. They talk about sensors. They talk about, data collection and analysis. They talk
Yeah.
about making something smarter than it was before. And in my
Mhm.
world, in construction, there's, people still swing hammers, and they've been
Mm-hmm.
swinging hammers for a long time. And it's not an industry that necessarily changes super fast.
Well,
Uh,
let me disagree with you with that. In Austin, we can
mhm,
build a house now with the AI system and
that's
see no
true.
workers. So I mean, and it's coming.
Okay.
So let's
So
not feel safe. Let's not feel safe.
yeah, no. I'm not saying that I feel safe. I think it's an area that's ripe for this to change, because I
Oh
Mm-hmm.
think
yeah.
there's because some of those things that have not maybe have been slower traditionally to change. I think there are things within AI that can literally change the way that. I mean, even someone I was talking to someone the other day, and they're saying, even if you wanted to know for safety purposes, if the workers have sensors in their in their helmets or whatever, and then where everybody is on the job site at any given time, when they're coming and going, if someone has idle time, or if, I mean, there's just thinking about it on the level of just like practical day-to-day functions that people take. That's the part where I at least in my conversations with most people, if I explain to them, AI has a lot to do with this idea of you being able to collect, analyze, and data, and then take that data to be able to create a new environment. They don't talk about
Mm-hmm.
it. They talk about interfacing with some sort of online you know, chat GPT tool that is their definition of AI. So there's kind of like this disconnect too, I think, between general
Mm-hmm.
public, the definition of what these things
I
are
think I
and how they
think
impact
people
us.
people will get a much better sense of AI when they see hardware that is AI driven. At the moment,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
it's still in the arena of software.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it is the software side that has felt the initial impact, writing,
Mm-hmm.
law, journalism, teaching. But the hardware side, when you see a robo taxi outside, when
Mm-hmm.
your
Mm-hmm.
Uber car is robotic,
Mm-hmm.
and when you on that job site where not only is there a sensor giving you situational awareness of everything moving on the site, but that helmet is on a humanoid, not on a man. This is
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
not very far off. In my
Right.
calculations, which are non-scientific, it's about 5 years before we get this sense that hardware is now AI controlled. And this is going to be very disturbing. It's a
Mm-hmm.
huge change.
Yeah.
The bottleneck will be building robots, building AI taxis, building cars that are automatically controlled. Just the supply chain will again come into play. And you'll need
Mm-hmm.
people to repair and maintain these devices. It'll be
Yeah.
in our lifetime when we'll have another machine maintaining a machine. In the foreseeable future, machines will be maintained by workmen. It seems to
Right.
me that the solid jobs ahead are really the artisanal jobs.
Yeah.
And that
Mm-hmm.
includes most people, but not all the people on your building site.
Well, Mark,
Mm-hmm.
It
yeah,
cannot
Mark,
include
yeah,
the cement truck driver because the cement
Mick,
truck
Mick.
may be automatically
Mick,
driven.
yeah.
But these are massive changes, and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to depend somewhat on finding new things for people to do. And I wanted to ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
You are in a very dynamic part of the world. Your business is very dynamic. What do you see coming along that you think is really creative, that has within it some nuggets of what will be a transformative technology or concept?
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple of things come to mind. One of those is probably the microgrid kind of power situation is going to change things a lot. Um, I think there's some hurdles of that, how it ties into a larger grid if it does, but kind of these, eco parks with their own power systems, creating, and we're an industrial lot, so supplying power, from the general grid to that. I see that being something that's happening already, but it's definitely accelerating, and it's starting to have a significant impact because where you can, if you can run a microgrid, it doesn't have to be next to a city. So where a lot of things that were going on industrial wise were always in a certain geographic locale around a city, it feels like they're starting to move like further out away from kind of the traditional, like, urban area with a ancillary industrial component. It seems to be moving further away and being located in another area geographically because they can sustain their own utility infrastructure. So that is feels like that's going to cause a really big change, because that also drives changes about workforce housing and where people live, because they may want to live in that urban center, but now that job is a little as a ways away. And so how do you deal with that distance, because it wasn't that way before. They lived far away and then they drove in, you know what I mean? So that dynamic seems to be really interesting component of how this will work moving forward, at least in our world. I certainly see that being pretty dynamic. And then I just think that AI really in the construction space. So someone else, I was also in dialogue with someone about being able to predict weather patterns that impact supply chains, that being able to track all of that and understand it, and have a lot more predictive analytics on when you can execute projects, how long it will take, how many of your workers are, being as efficient as they can be in their roles. And even though they might get replaced at some point by a humanoid, which I don't doubt is on the horizon, to be honest with you. But in the interim, I think there's still a lot of opportunity for there to be uh, a significant impact on people's work within the confines of the construction world. So that's just a couple of thoughts that from your question, Llewellyn.
Let me
Let me make some money off of Mick real fast. Mick,
Oh,
I'm gonna make
boy.
some money off of you. I want you to. I'm gonna have it such that you know the number of times a hammer hits the wood. We're gonna put a sensor, and then I'm gonna put sensor on your workers. You're gonna know the number of times that they go off of work and where they go to eat. And then I'm gonna put
Right.
another sensor on your workers to look at exactly what time they get to work. So what I've done, I'm giving you the opportunity to use AI. So as you take off in your private airplane, you can look around and say, I wonder what my workers are doing, and look right at your phone and say, oh, John Butler's sitting on his ass. Lou Allen King is swinging a hammer. That's where we are now. And then if you want to go to the office, I can tell you exactly the number of types people set on their computer. So let's do that contract,
Sure.
and I will make you more efficient.
I was gonna ask Mick real quick. Mick, do you see that there's a whole push on the construction side around prefab homes, model homes, portable homes? Do you see a shifting going on the new neighborhoods, on the new, Icon has houses in multiple places, but do you see other technologies? Is there a push to build faster and really use these new innovations, or what's going on there?
It's an interesting question. I'm not as tied into the housing, the residential side of it, but there's things that I see because we do get involved with some master plan communities. I think a really good framing crew. I think I was talking to a framing lead carpenter that, was running a crew, and I think they said they could frame a house every day and a half, I think. They could frame a house. So, and that's their crew of like 4 or 5 guys, going X number of hours a day, and they could frame a house and a half, basically. And they were a house in a day and a half. So every day and a half they were framing a house. That's a lot faster than it used to be, significantly faster than what it used to be to frame a house. And there's a lot of things, tool technology. By the way, we could probably spin out on a whole dialogue about AI and tool technology and what it will mean for construction and the production of tools and what tools will do. But I remember, I come from a construction background. I remember when the nail guns came out, the pneumatic nail guns. I remember the gas nail guns came out. I remember there's then the battery powered nail guns came out. There was this evolution of the tools themselves, and how they function, and I see that's gonna continue too, in the world of things. I think that what I haven't seen, Andreas, is where the other technologies have caught on in areas where the housing stock tends to be a little more affordable. So, for example, where I live, I'm a little bit further removed from the city. I'm out a little ways because my wife and I bought some property, and they're building a lot of homes out there. And when I say a lot of homes, there's a 800-acre site just south of us, and they're going to build about 5,000 homes on that site. I'm pretty sure that's all going to be stick framed, what I would call like kind of not manufactured housing, but it would be, housing that was, certainly the kind of row housing or track housing, for those projects. And they're going to build them, in tranches of, 100, 150 homes over the next, X number of years. They're going to build that out. What I don't see is some of these other, I don't see them bringing in like manufactured homes. I don't see them bringing in like Icon doing 3D printed homes there yet. I don't see that yet on that
Got it.
scale. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not saying that it's not possible or it's not happening somewhere. I haven't seen it. So,
got it.
I have a quick question. I was interested when you were explaining the evolution of the nail gun, which is of interest to me because my father did that kind of work, and there were no nail guns; there were hammers. Period. But have you seen a similar evolution in wiring houses? That has always seemed rather simplistic and time-consuming, and of course, absolutely essential part of the construction.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, even, I'm gonna talk about the hammer in a second, but the wiring has certainly evolved. Just the coating around the wire, the flexibility of it, and what, I don't know how much you guys are aware, and maybe you are, like, wiring has gotten really funky because on the commercial side, if you have a vacant building, it is not unusual for someone to break in there and strip all of the copper out of that building, at first to go sell it. There's a huge rush on like copper theft from commercial sites, because of the demand for copper. That continues to happen, but when I remember remodeling, structures from the late 1800s or the early 1900s, and they would have, you get the kind of the tar covered, electrical wires that I'm pretty sure the coating was flammable, let alone, had bare wires inside of it, or wire wrapped in paper that was, covered with a kind of a tar based type of, wrapping, or with like a webbing with some kind of tar. It has evolved to, much more pliable, it slides easier through through conduits. So there's a lot. I think that technology is as advanced, but I don't know. I don't work at it enough to know like how much faster that will evolve. I think there's going to be other solutions for like internal power. Like isn't there the possibility someday of there being like wireless capabilities for things versus plugging in cords and doing things? I mean, we've done a lot of other things, so I can't imagine that we'd be completely incapable of doing something like that someday. But I've definitely seen that evolve. And then I might, because this is what I want John to make for. I want him to put a sensor in my hammer that tells me how many times I swing it a day, what type of force my hammer produces when it hits an object, and I want to know when that force is at its peak and when it declines, so that we have optimal times during the day when our workforce is most productive with
That
their
is no
hammer.
problem.
Can you help me with that too? That's no
Yes, we can
problem.
do that. The airline industry has done that. We can do that. And we can also make it
Yes.
such that it can be so restrictive. We'll know. Look, I was a consultant for State Farm Insurance for 22 years. And at one time,
Right.
when the storm hit in Louisiana, we didn't know what the workers were doing. For any insurance company now,
Yeah.
that's over,
Yeah.
right? And not only
Yeah.
that,
That's right.
if you're married, your wife know what you're doing. So I guess so we have
Yes.
sensors now for everything, but and also, and this is what you should do, the impact on their health. And I think in your
Yeah.
industry is a
That's right.
great impact on your health. They're gonna be more
100%.
healthier. So you can have all of
Yes.
that in the matrix, and Andres could write the. We're not going to charge you much. Andreas is,
Yeah.
a boy like you, a couple of million. You got that in your watch pocket.
It'll be
Remember, Mick.
fine. It'll be
Remember
fine.
this.
It'll be
Remember
fine.
this, Mick. In
Yeah.
Texas, they said, Dr. Butler, do you know a millionaire? And I said, that's an embarrassment. We're in Texas. B is the number. It's a billionaire. Everybody's got a
It's
million.
B.
So remember.
That's right.
So my point is, yes. No,
Yeah.
seriously, it's very interesting. Every
Yeah.
question that you just asked can be answered, from the number
Yeah.
to the force, the impact on
Mhm.
health, the
Sure.
impact on
Yeah.
danger. You can have situations where you tell the worker, stop, there's a nail in front of you. How about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meg, what's it? I'm looking at the time here. We need to wrap up and let
Mhm.
these guys give final thoughts. But from your point of view, what's in front of you the next 6 months? Any projects, anything coming that we should know about?
Well, I mean, we have made a big push for really making a stronger um, market for us in Korea, South Korea. We will continue to do that in Asia. I think there's just still a lot of interest. We're very interested in the trade deal that was just signed between South Korea and the United States, and the investment requirements surrounding that trade agreement with the United States. There's a lot of need there. We are going to continue to push to help on our part. I mean, certainly there's going to be a lot of people playing a role in that, but playing our part in helping support those organizations that are looking to be a part of Texas. And we know that Texas is a very attractive market for them for a lot of reasons. But
Hmm.
it has the same risks that Llewellyn was talking about earlier. And, no question that's going to be a part of that exercise, is responding to some of those risks for sure. But we expect to really continue to make a strong push into that space moving forward. And I see us continuing to have a lot of what we in our world just call end users. So the actual companies themselves,
Hmm.
developing and owning and building and doing projects that has increased significantly.
Hmm.
Where a lot of developers have kind of moved aside for a while, end users, companies, big drivers in the market right now. Expect that to continue over the next
Sure.
6 months
Well,
for sure.
thanks for being with us, Llewellyn. Final thoughts.
I think it's very interesting, the universality of the evolution, that everything is touched, including, as Johnny said, the operation of a hammer. And this data will affect the design of everything going forward. So we're into a multifaceted revolution, which may be AI driven, but it has dimensions to it that are simply innovative and simply different. I think that Mick has a very good approach to this, and a very sensible one. I would think that the impediments ahead are, in fact, in our relationships with other countries, which we sadly ignored or exacerbated in this year, 2025. I wish you all good luck.
All
Thank you.
right, Johnny, final thoughts, and then
Mick,
take
I
us
think
away.
that the safest industry in America is the airline industry, because every time there's a mistake, we learn from it and we put a sensor on it. And
Yeah.
I think the American workplace would catch up with the airline industry. Can you imagine that for every accident in your industry, you had a sensor, you had a black box to tell you exactly what happened. So this is why being an airplane pilot is one of the safest in the world and the safest mode of transportation with millions taking off. And I look forward that when industries like yours can use sensors to enhance the workplace and to make sure that the accidents never happen again, because we know whether it's automobiles or whether it's building homes or whether it's mowing lawns, we never had the sensors to say it, what happened. But when an airline industry stops and goes down, we get the black box and we improve on every mechanism that we can see. And you're dynamic, and Andreas is ready to help you with the price, of course.
Take us away, Johnny.
Yes. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
The only thing in life worth living, a guitars that's tuned well and good-looking women. I don't need my name in marquee lights. Let's go to Lincoln, Texas. Feeling, wailing, and the boys. This successful life we're living got us feeling like the Hatfields and McCoys. Between Jeff Jarrett's train song and Newberry's rain song and Blue Eyes crying in the rain. Back in Lincoln, Texas, ain't nobody feeling no pain. Stay with those small towns, young man.
I will. Thank you.
Hey, take care. Bye-bye.
You guys.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
See you.
Uh-huh.